So I wanted to show a few different examples of some silhouettes that I've created. So this first thing that you can see here, it's got a small figure up to the side to simulate something about scale. And so hopefully that little kind of icon thing that you're seeing right there um, can give you some kind of indication of maybe how large this item is, and hopefully you can kind of tell by the silhouette that it's something probably alien and maybe a ship of some sort. And if I hide the backdrop part of this, let me go ahead and hide this part here. You can see this is what was created for this ship design. So if I zoom out a little bit, I just wanted to show you on this piece something that I started where I actually did some different drawings with pen, and it was almost felt like a crayon of some sort to get this kind of blue color, and then just used a pen to do some line work. But pulled that into the computer, just took a picture of it, and I actually made two different layers of this. I kind of took one version and blurred it out, so if I put the opacity up higher on there, what I did was I took this top drawing, and then I went to filter, and then we went to noise, and then say median, and it does something kind of like this. And then I put the original drawing by adjusting some levels on it. So if you hit Control L, that'll bring up the levels, and you can adjust the levels, and you can adjust the mid values, you can adjust the darks, or you could adjust the lights on there. So I try to get as much as the paper texture to disappear on there as possible. It's also possible you can drag this all the way to the left, and that'll make it darker. And if you take the dark in and drag it over here, you can make it towards white on there. So I put that on there and put this on multiply. So you can see this is what it looked like just with the normal mode. So I put this on multiply, so it multiplies over the top of this one here, and then just combine those together. Then I started just to, I made a layer group that you can create right here through those two in there, and then from that group I put a mask on there, and you can see how if I hold down Alt, I can click on here, you can see how I started basically with a hard edge brush, started to separate this ship from the background. From there, if I hold down Shift and then just click on that so you can see it, I'll just hide this again. From here I'll show you the different layers that I created on this this design here. So if I go from the very beginning, this is kind of what I started off with. This isn't exactly the order that I built it in, but this is a solid color. Just made a solid color layer right here like this. I really like solid color layers because you can go back and you can interactively change the colors at any point. So it makes a non-destructive workflow. And then from there, this is just a shadow that I made. This is some of the exhaust. I stole some of the, I'll talk about this color dodge thing that I made earlier. So this whole group, I just made a folder group called ship because I wanted all this to sit above this stuff. So within the ship, let's see what we got. If I turn this on, let me turn everything off because we are at the point of the exhaust. Here's what the actual drawing started to look like. So I duplicated it, and then I was using the smudge brush, and I really like this. Let's see, this cotton ball rub. That's probably the one that I used the most for this, and so depending on various sizes, I can kind of mix this together a little bit, and then did some painting of some different values, maybe make some area a little bit lighter, some areas a little bit darker. But I did raise up the levels to where there wasn't any really darks in here at all. And then from here I made a gradient, and you can see it's another solid color layer, and I made it like a darker blue, and then just held the shape of it. And what I did with that is threw this into a folder group, put a mask on there, and then just did a radial gradient. So if I tab G for gradient, here's the radial gradient, and if you choose the gradients and you go to basic, this is foreground color to transparent. And that's the option that I use quite a bit for that, maybe a small opacity there. But that allows you to just drag out and then build a nice gradient from whatever the center point is from whatever you're doing, just like that. And so that gradient sits there. This is the line work that I made for everything, so maybe it'll be easier to see if I kind of show it like this. And let me Let me do this 100%. So this is after you've, if you feel comfortable with the line work and everything, like, or sorry, the silhouette, you can move it forward to these different stages. I'm just showing what could be possible a little bit later on with things. So I'll put this back on here, and then I made another layer and set it to just, it's actually normal, but the brush that I'm using for that, if I go to airbrush glow, it's just an airbrush set to blending mode of color dodge, and then picking colors maybe in this color range and here this saturation range, and then depending on what color you want to use, it sits somewhere within here, and if you push it a little bit lighter it gets quite a bit brighter. So that brush builds up really quick and makes it feel as if, you know, there's like a fire or light coming out of it, which is pretty neat. So here's just the shape blocked out and silhouetted out. So that's just some possibility for you to potentially make a design. Here's some additional ship designs that I've done in the past, and before I show them to you, these are in a 3/4 view, and I think it can be a little bit tough to do maybe ship designs and have those read correctly, especially as you start to look at them right now. So it's sometimes I do think it's going to be a little bit tough to maybe sell the silhouette this way. So here's each one of these. Very similar process to what I just showed you before. Maybe did a little bit of shading on there, and then did some line work on there, and then added some different glow to these. But again, it's obviously going to be a lot more clear, and should be a lot more clear after you show the color portion of this. But the designs should work from a silhouette standpoint, and my goal is to just make a bunch of different ships and try to make sure that each one of the silhouettes was a bit different and could read as a different ship, even if it was completely blacked out. Here's some creature designs that I did, and was definitely influenced by crabs and spiders for these. And so here's after taking these through the complete painting process and then finishing them up here. But again, you would probably do those designs and do silhouettes first and get some idea of where you're headed with things. Then pick the designs that work the best, and then push them to completion. These were just fun little exercises for me and just making some art, so there wasn't any kind of pressure to do silhouettes in a way that would allow for design selection. So these creatures were a whole lot more sketch-like and not pushed to a finished completion. So I think this might be kind of close to a normal process here. So you could do some silhouettes, but you can also at the same time, if we just take this off and you see what was actually done for the designs on these, you can see that everything is pretty rough, pretty loose and pretty sketchy. But at this stage of designing, maybe it's a little bit easier and faster to get a bunch of ideas out kind of quickly. And then from there, whenever you've got a few of your designs a bit more solidified, you could pick the top designs that you want, and then maybe it gets pushed to this stage here. So I'm just going to try to zoom in a bit more like this. And you can see just trying to do a little bit more separation with value, and still working on the shapes of these. And so you can see after that is done, then it's possible that you could push this and start working on the colored versions of things. So in these examples, I blacked these out, but they were a bit more painterly against this background, so they're not quite solid illustrations. So that's why the background's kind of bleeding through, and you can still see some of the colors and things like that. But I think it still illustrates the idea that if you remove all the lighting information from these and you silhouette it out, you should see some difference in the characters, right? So the goal is at a glance that you could, just by the silhouette alone, know that if it is character A, B, or C. And then when I remove silhouette and show you those in lighting, if those things read well with the silhouette and then you put the color on, in most cases, if you've got a successful design, then it should read all that much better after you've added all the detail and the color and the lighting information. I wanted to show you that it is possible to use 3D to build silhouettes as well. So you could do something like have a set of geometry that you can kit bash together to build different designs. And I've actually made a video about this. It's under the FIA Bootcamp silhouette assignment. This is something that I used to run in the past. But if you go visit this area on YouTube, there's also a link to Gumroad to actually download the Maya file for this. And if you take a look at the video, I'm just going to scrub through this kind of quickly. So if I just fast forward through this a bit, you can see it's just got some basic geometry on there. But what I'm doing is I'm showing you how to change the background color inside of Maya and just set up a simple material to black out the shapes. And then you can rotate this thing around in 3D. And then it's also possible to take the different shapes, duplicate them, move, scale, and rotate them to build different designs. I was giving an art PureRef board that you can see here to kind of take a look at for some maybe inspiration and things like that for what people might take for those shapes and create with it. The other thing that I do is kind of show how to go into Photoshop and then quickly build up what would be a final layout for this right in here. And so if you want to take a look at that, go ahead and take a look at that video and you can kind of see that process. And then once I get into Photoshop, I was doing a little bit of painting inside of Photoshop to change up some of the different designs. But that might be a way that you can potentially explore shape designs using Silhouette and just using 3D if you don't feel quite as comfortable as strong with your 2D work. So something I wanted to draw your attention to is the fact that you could potentially use Legos as a design tool. So instead of actually building these things in 3D in the computer, it might be pretty quick for you to take some existing Lego pieces and assemble those and then be able to take photographs of that and pull that into Photoshop and draw over the top of that, and you could black out these shapes and make the silhouettes from that. But this could also give you a starting point for some shading and some lighting too as well. So I'm going to take you through some of these. I made these as Lego packs for the students in the past where they were actually building these in 3D, but you can see with these different pieces that you have, even with a very small amount of pieces, you could do quite a few different designs from there and get some interesting shapes that way. And so here's some different shapes that we have for these here. And so these are just some quick designs. And the cool thing about it is you're automatically going to get your perspective in there, and you're going to be able to do multiple shots from maybe the top, side, bottom. So you're going to be able to get that object as a 360-degree object in 3 dimensions. Here's some more designs that are created, some of the different shapes on here. And it's pretty fun and goes pretty quick to be able to make some of these designs like this. So again, I just wanted to point this out, that this could be another tool that you use. You could also kit bash real world objects as well, so you might have a variety of toys and things like that that you could assemble together. If you're just using this as a basis to pull into Photoshop, you could use a lot of different techniques, take a bunch of photos from different angles, pull that in, and use Photoshop to collage that. And that could be the starting point for you to get a bunch of shapes that you could use for your silhouettes, and then pushing that onto the different things that you create with value. So there's 2 techniques that I want to show you inside of Photoshop that might make it a little more interesting for you to be able to do these silhouettes inside of here. I think you already know if you've got a brush and you choose some brush in here, and I think I've got this felt marker medium tip from the brush sets that I've made. I'm going to make a solid color layer, and what I like about this is that this is non-destructive, so any point we can make a color, and we can always go back and change our mind and come back to this later. So I'm just going to make this pure black like this, and the way that you can manipulate the solid color layer is with the mask that it creates here. So I'm going to fill the mask with black. Right now it's white, so it's letting all the black come through. So to fill it with this background color I've got here, if I hit Alt backspace, it's going to fill with the foreground color. If I do Control backspace, it's going to do this color right here. So I'll hit Control backspace. And so now I've got a brush, and I can paint within here. So I'll just do a shape for maybe a chest and a pelvis, and then maybe a leg and another leg, like here. I'll do a hand with an arm. I'm just going to go pretty quick here, just because I want to show you the technique. Put some feet in here, and if we've got a head, then if we start working on some design elements and something about the costume, maybe he's got a helmet on, shoulder pads. See, this is where with silhouette, I'd like to do a cape, but if I just put a big shape right here, you're not going to see any of his body, which might be okay, but I can't see his hands anymore. But we could do this. So I wanted to show you about this. So since we're using a mask, if we've got black and white as our colors, if we tap X, we can flip-flop our colors. And if we take this white, we're painting into it, and if we tap X and we're painting with black, we can flip-flop this. So we're basically erasing out on this. But if we're just working with black and white, this can give us the illusion that we're doing some white lines. So I don't think it's horrible that if you've got silhouettes that you could add a little extra information in there, and you can get some white lines to maybe get the outer edge of some shapes. Then that way you can still do the silhouette, but maybe read a little bit of what you're seeing for the costume design. The other thing this will let you do, because you can take any one of your brushes, you're using the same brush. If I tap X, I'm drawing with it, and if I tap X again, I'm erasing. So I can use the same brush that I'm painting with as my eraser brush. And why it becomes pretty powerful is because you can get a hold of any of the brushes that you have, and so you can easily turn any of your brushes into an eraser at the same time. So you get the same look for erasing that you do for drawing. And I think that's a pretty nice way to work. Okay, so I'm going to hide that. The other thing is working with something like this, and what I was using on this is the lasso tool. So if we tap L, we get the lasso tool here, and you can draw a shape with this. And what I was saying is if you get used to off to the right side, you've got Alt and Control past the spacebar, and that will map to these two colors here. So if I Alt backspace, it's going to fill with this one. Control backspace fills with this one. So if I've got black in here as a color, I'm just going to push it here. I can hit Alt backspace like this, and with the lasso tool you can draw out. I'll fill it. If I just tap, it releases it. Now if I want to do this, let me hit this, and then just click to release it, and do a shape like that for a leg. So I have noticed it forces me to draw in a different way, for sure. Some other things that's interesting about it, if you're pretty loose and sketchy with it, you can get some looks like this at times. So you might just want to play around with that. But it could be a way for you to get some really hard edge designs going like this. The other thing you could do is take your transparency, and you can hold your transparency at that point, and you could maybe put it on the gradient tool. I'll do a circular gradient, and then go from here, go to the basics, and then just do, this is foreground transparent like this. So if I flip-flop these colors, and if I take my color picker here and make it a gray, since I held that transparency on there, I can fill with a gradient and do something like this. So that might end up being somewhat interesting for your designs as well. So I just wanted to show you those two things. Actually there's just one more thing with the lasso tool. So let me go back to this. I'm going to turn this hold transparency off so I can continue drawing. So with the lasso tool, I was showing you we can do this free-form drawing like what we have here. The other thing we can do is if we hold on Alt with this, we can click just points and make straight lines with that. So I'm holding down Alt and then just clicking, and it turns it into a polygon tool temporarily. So that does exist within here, this polygon lasso tool, but you could use the regular lasso, and if you hold down Alt and hold, you can still draw, but if you hold down Alt and then click point, point, point like this, you're making polygon shapes with that. Alright, so real quick, just wanted to show you a few little techniques inside of Photoshop that might help and aid in the creation of some of your silhouette and thumbnail shapes.